went from primary school to secondary school. They were just thrown into it.
Yeah.
There was no baby steps for them, and then that's when a lot of these kids with anxieties, it started to come out, and it's just heartbreaking. It really is. I'm sure you'll have some parents phoning, and I've got their back.
No, they will be very well. It's bittersweet that they'll be very encouraged to hear you, but they'll be wishing to Billy-O that they had someone like you in their corner more directly, if you see what I mean, more immediately.
I wish there was more.
Yes, and someone's just pointed out in a text that I've lost that for women, or for girls rather, at that age, they might have gone into pre-puberty, gone into lockdown pre-puberty, and they're going back to school with entirely new identities, almost new bodies post-puberty. So you're adding all sorts of things to this mix, and that crossover year, that year 11 to that first year of secondary school from primary school, that's where God blimey. Thank you, Paula. That's like a master's guide to what is going on in some elements of this statistic, and therefore it becomes supremely unsurprising, perhaps, that persistent absence has rocketed post-pandemic. It's 11:31, and Lottie Morley is here with your headlines. 26 minutes to 12 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I mean, it's not really a mystery anymore, but there'll be lots of different answers to the same question as to why the number of children persistently absent from school, which again is an unhelpful phrase. It's not as bad as truant, is it? But the persistent absence sounds like an act of deliberate refusal rather than incapability, perhaps. But why would the pandemic have exacerbated the problem so completely? Sophie's in Guildford. Sophie, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
So I've got two daughters. One of them, 100% attendance, goes to school every day.
Yep.
The other one, she's very bright, she's very academic, she works very hard. She's also autistic, and she would fall into this category that you've been talking about.
Right.
And I think on the days when she's struggling, nothing, you could fine her, you could threaten her with whatever you wanted, you could threaten me with whatever you wanted, but when she can't go into school, she can't go into school. And I think the lady before hit it right on the head. My daughter, she could have been describing my daughter. She changed schools, she moved secondary school in 2020. All the things she talked about, I was like, yes!
That is, I feel seen, but unfortunately Paula's in Stoke-on-Trent and you're in Guildford.
I know, she could move, that would be nice.
That's true.
But yeah, and I think I'm glad to hear you saying that not to blame the parents and not to blame the children, because it's not that they can't, it's not that they won't go to school, it's that they can't go to school. And we wouldn't blame somebody who couldn't walk on a broken leg
I know,
for not being able to walk.
I just find that it's almost becoming a cliche, that observation, but it's so powerful, and things were getting a lot better. Things have been better than they were in the 70s by a country mile, but I fear they might have gone backwards, particularly in terms of funding and support since 2010, because when schools have to make cuts to budgets and staffing levels, it's going to be the staff who look after a small number of pupils who are at the front of the queue. And then post-pandemic, things get worse again.
I agree. I think I was saying to your producer exactly that. I think possibly there's pandemic links, but I think also there's a lot to do with funding and the fact that before the pandemic, there was lots of teaching assistants in schools and lots of support and a lot of that. So the children that were just about getting along with that support in place, the support's been ripped away. They haven't got that backup anymore, and it's led to this. And it really, the teachers do their best, the schools do their best, but they're so limited that kindness goes a long way, but it can only go so far. And if they haven't got the resources, there's only so much they can do.
And there it is. So what do you do on a bad day? Just sit with it?
Well, yeah. So luckily, my daughter's school are really flexible.
You are very lucky, because there are a lot of schools that would not be. I think they're all in need of improvement, but you're lucky there. I've just got back from taking her now, so she goes in when she's ready, and there's no pressure from the school to rush her in or to get her in, and I don't mean they don't care, because they do care, but they don't mind what time that is. Yes, of course.
And they work with us, and they're wonderful. And I feel anyone who's not in that position with their school or with their employer must have things a lot harder, because without that support from the school, I honestly don't think she would be in school now. I think she would be out of school altogether.
Yeah, and the school, and they understand that. The school understand that to have her 90% of the time is better than having a no% of the time. To have her 50% of the time is better than having a No percent of the time. But again, the sort of prescriptive nature of education, league tables would, of course, lend themselves to a school regime, to a head teacher being less sympathetic. But you can't. Education is about so much more than numbers and letters on a piece of paper at the end of the exam season. Thank you, Sophie. And it's weird to talk about being lucky in the context of also being unlucky, but of course you are. If something suboptimal is happening in your life and you're getting help, you are luckier than someone who is enduring the same problem who isn't getting help. Emma is in Southport. Emma, what would you like to say?
Hi, I can sort of mirror the story of the first two.
Yeah.
My son's 14. He's having a really, really difficult time. He is on the pathway for ASD.
Right.
And when things have got really bad last year, I asked for a reduced timetable.
Yes.
My reduced timetable, because his anxieties are so high, and I think only for the love he's got for me and his dad, is the only reason, like, he gets up every day, and he can never just get up and get dressed like my
he wakes up.
children.
He wakes up with rocks on his shoulders, with a black dog on his shoulders.
Yeah, but I can get him through the door most days. But it got to a point where he was feeling suicidal. Nothing felt like living. His anxiety became crippling. Even when he was lying in bed of a night time and he'd had a few of his mates staying it over, he said, "Mum, this feeling just doesn't go away any time." So I went back to school and said, right, I need to reduce his anxieties. So they said, okay, well, what about a reduced timetable? So I said, great, I'll bring him in 3 days a week. And they said, no, our reduced timetable is you bring him in at 10 and he goes at 2.
Right.
And I said, well, where's the reduction in his anxieties?
It doesn't work like that, does it?
It doesn't matter to him whether he's going to school at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. He's still going to school, which is predominantly the centre of what causes him the most distress. And then because he sort of comes home from school and he replays his day, it takes him ages to calm down. Now, I've got foster children. And they've been removed from their parents and placed with me because of the sort of experiences they've had.
Yes.
And I think to myself, I feel like I'm doing my son more emotional harm than what the children I'm looking after have been removed from their parents for. So I'm thinking, who am I?
You mean by prioritising, by kind of, for want of a better word, you mean by forcing him to go to school? Yeah.
Forcing him to go to school.
Well, you're not forcing him to go to school. You're trying to accommodate.
No, I'm just the system.
Oh, mate. I mean, crikey. And are the school coming at it as a box-ticking exercise then? Because, I mean, you say that you were going to echo...
Like
right, because you've had a very different experience from the previous caller, whose child's school is recognising what needs to be done, as opposed... Because you say, I can't go to school some days. Right, well, in that case, you can come in at 10. I mean, it's just witless, isn't it? It's stupid.
It's my number. So they did agree with it for 6 weeks and then said that they would review it after that because that's not in their policy and that's not what they do. I'm waiting for them to start pulling me up now because I have said to him, listen, this is year 10, year 11. He is now on some medication for it. And I've said, right, okay. He's off today, but on his days off, even when I said to him, right, he'll be going to work with my brother.
Yeah.
He'll be doing some building work. You can't be doing that. How can he be off school and being all anxious and depressed, but yet you're sending him off to work? And I'm like, well...
It's about what he gets anxious about, you silly sausage, isn't it? I mean, goodness me, he doesn't get anxious in that context, and he does get anxious in that context. How hard can that be to understand? You might as well say if it's all that bad, how can he stay in bed all day? I mean, it's just a stupid thing to say. It's. Oh, I'm sorry. I really am.
At least he's not doing nothing. And
yes, exactly.
I'm quite proactive. I've explored every possible avenue. The 14 to 16 year provisions. One time I made a phone call that said, right, follow this number. So I followed the numbers across through the government website. Phone this number, and at the end of the phone, I was like, I'm inquiring about your 14 to 16 provision. And they said, I don't know what you're on about. And I said, well, I followed the government website to come, and this would be a perfect for my son. This is exactly what he needs, half educational, half work experience. That's ideal. It's a different setting. No, we haven't got anything like that. And I'm like, well, I followed it off the government. No, we haven't got anything.
Well, it's just
and
not
then
there.
Other courses, they've said, Yeah, the funding's been cut. We haven't got enough bodies. We haven't got enough bums on seats. There's just nothing. There's no other alternative. And he would thrive in a work environment.
Yeah, I get it. So that's the 2010 catching. And then finally, with the pandemic, has that made a difference, do you think, or not? The lockdown, the distance learning?
I do. He would just absolutely benefit from that, to go back to that sort of environment. Yes, right. Social, but he's quite social anyway, really. He does get himself out and about, but generally that's because he's had, it's as if like because he's wasted his day in school, he's got to turn that day into something a bit more positive, so he'll go out and meet his friends and things, so I'm quite fortunate there.
Well, you go both mums saying, recognising that they're luckier than others, but of course unluckier than many as well. I just actually, before you go, Emma, I don't do that thing then when you thought that you were doing harm to your boy. You're not. You're doing your absolute best, and it's very lucky to have you.
Oh, but you pull yourself apart.
I know, like, you do.
Because when you know that he is so distressed, and you're saying to him, I know this is bad, but you've got to.
Yes.
Because I'm a foster carer, I'm classed as a professional person. I'm actually doing mental health nursing and social work.
Gosh.
So it's like I feel like I'm stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea. What do I do for the best? And believe me, I've explored every avenue, and I think
exactly.
The poor parents who are out there who have got possible issues themselves or haven't got the support and think, right, that's not worked. Yeah. Let's try this instead. And believe me, I've explored every avenue and struggle.
I know, but I know that you know that you shouldn't be hard on yourself, even when it is irresistible. But you really shouldn't, because it's
you know, as parents, that's what we do. We pull ourselves apart.
Well, and that you can only ever be as happy as your unhappiest child, which is a bit of a glib saying, but it contains a kernel of truth, doesn't it? But be kind to yourself, Emma, please.
Yes.
All right.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Well, there you go. Stay safe. It's 11:45. It is 11:49, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the crisis is immense, isn't it, Paula? And in fact, all the callers really touching. A lot of heart and a lot of nerves, in fact, this morning. And the education system is not fit for purpose in this sense. And that, it's not the fault of teachers. Teachers are striking to try to make things better for children and themselves. But of course, some people would probably turn that around and claim that they're adding to the problems, in the same way that Rishi Sunak tries to blame the state of the NHS on striking doctors rather than 13 years of real term cuts, and lies, of course, about everything from 40 new hospitals through to increases in investment. You kind of see why. Particularly, what year is it? What's the final year of primary school? Is that year 10? No. Well, no, of course it isn't. I get so confused on this. It's year 11, the final, year 6, and then the first year of secondary school is year 7. Yeah, so that is the cohort I worry most about. The ones that, and one of mine was in that cohort, actually, going from year 6 to year 7, and then year 7 being obliterated by distance learning, because that entry into secondary school is traumatic enough already, and you didn't have it. You didn't have your handheld during that period. The reason why I get confused on years, despite having 2 children in the system, is because my school had, you know what my school called these things? They were called things like the remove and the upper fifth. Perkins Minor in the upper fifth is moving into the remove. I had a scholarship class as well that I was in at so when I was 13, I was in like a scholarship class. I think we called it the 6th form, but I was 13. And then I get to my next school and I'm in the 4th form. So I went from the 6th form to the 4th. That's why I get confused. That's it's not because I'm ignorant or stupid. Well, I might be ignorant and stupid, but on this issue, that's where my confusion comes from. As I think, what was I when I was 11? What was I? I was in 5A, which came after 5B. So it went 5C, 5B, 5A, 6th form, 4th form, 5th form, remove, lower 6th, upper 6th. It's just insane, isn't it? And we did private education yesterday. Helen's in Cambridge. Helen, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James.
Hello.
First of all, I'd just like to say that I found you just after the pandemic, and you've been the only person I can listen to and really feel like I've got an adult conversation every day, because what happened to me was everything was ticking along fine with 2 boys, one in year 3, one in year 1, and the pandemic hit, and I was working in a high school as a special needs support for children, and my children didn't take the pandemic situation well at all.
Right.
One in the year one, he got very upset about eating around other people, knives and forks, cups.
Okay.
And the eldest was very upset about all the changes to the classroom, being in class from children from different age groups, different teachers that he didn't know. He is on the spectrum. We're a neurodiverse family, so that's absolutely fine. And then it just went completely wrong to the point where when they did go back, they were key worker children that found it very hard to go in.
Right.
But when they did go back, it's almost like every bit of strength in them, their resolve, was gone.
Oh.
And it got to the point, I'll keep it succinct for you because it's a long story. It got to the point where my husband is doing a PhD and sort of quite high in medical world.
Right.
He couldn't cut his hours. And we said, so I've got 2 children that aren't going into school, but I'm working in the school, helping new year 7s cope with school.
Yeah.
And we just had to make the decision that I would have to give up work. And my life and my battle would be, because we chose attendance would be to get them into school and make that environment work for them through a journey of building a relationship with the schools.
Yeah, I've got it.
They had to move schools several times because primary schools aren't always receptive to building that relationship, especially when the parent is saying, well, this is what we need to do, can we do this? It's not always how they like it. No. But then I found the one that did, and they're wonderful. So what I've done with my boys, and it's every morning, I go into battle every morning, especially with the 11-year-old that's just started high school. Yeah. Won't get out of bed. We start at 6 a.m. We have processes we go through. Sometimes he just won't talk, so we use pictures to communicate. Right. We use lots of different tactics. I never ever physically, although I am trained to restrain and things because I work with high-level stuff. Yes. I don't, because it's not going to help with it. Just makes school look like a bad thing.
Of course.
So what we've got to the point where is now, for example, yesterday, he was feeling sick. He gets anxiety, nosebleeds, the 11-year-old. He couldn't hold his bag. He just couldn't do anything. But we did go in. Right. We had a meeting that was an hour long. And I said to him, I'm not going to take you home. And he was devastated. He was grabbing my car keys. Yeah. Being 11 in high school, that's quite hard to watch. It's like watching him at 4.
Yes, of course.
And I said, I'm leaving you here. And the reason I'm leaving you here is because it's the right thing to do. And I've worked out with this school how we can make you happy. Yeah. And they are. Everything's built around books. He's a library worm. He's a bookworm. Right. So everything's built around books for him. And for my other son, everything's built around reading for him because he's the same. Okay. But it takes me
it's a mountain. All morning. Of course it is. Every single day.
Every single day. And then I put you on, sometimes not live because I'm later with the progress. And I think that this is my adult world. And I don't have anyone to... So sometimes I think my perspective from this conversation is that's what lockdown did. It changed my life a lot as well as my children's. Yeah. But I gave up a lot.
You did.
And I think... because I chose attendance...
What choices did you have? What would the other options be?
I applied to lots of different charities through all of the different processes, through early help with social services, family workers, and basically everyone said, if you can't make them go and you can't carry them to the car without shoes on, or you can't do it without getting... Sometimes I get bitten by my boys and sometimes I get hit and called names and things because they're so upset and stressed about going in and conforming and making it to the end of the day. My little one said, how do I make it to the end of the day, Mum?
Oh, bless him.
And I said, this is how you make it to the end of the day, love. And we've been working on that. It's time-consuming, it's stressful, and you lose yourself.
You do lose yourself. I get that completely. And also the concept of light at the end of the tunnel is not there either, is it? You know what it would look like and what it would involve, but you've got no idea of when or even whether it's ever going to be reached. It's a full-time job that you describe. And when they're at school, you're waiting for the phone to ring, I imagine, are you? Or...
Well, perfect timing. I got a phone call on Monday saying, can you come and get your son? Yeah. He's not well. So I knew instantly it was anxiety. He hadn't drunk much. I can tell you that because I know my son. Yeah. And he hadn't eaten because of the anxiety. So I went in, I said, I'm not going to take him home. And they were like, oh.
I'm going to feed him.
So I sat with 40 minutes with him through lunch. Yeah. He ate, we talked, we read, and then I said, I'm going to leave you here, lovey. And he said, okay. And I said, I'll see you at 3:30. And that's what I've done all along.
Because I gave
up my job to do it.
His tummy's in knots. And that is, I mean, you're lucky, again, seems the wrong word to use, to be in a position where you could do that. But
my husband's took on another day at work, so he does 6.5 days a week at work in a GP surgery, so he just keeps going and doing extra hours so that I can do that.
So it's all there. What are the good times? When do you have any moments of repose together? This
morning was great. They had a good morning.
Yeah.
They'd had a shower last night. They got dressed. This morning we did pancakes because they like baking, so I try and get round it. We start early. And I prepare. Yeah. So I prepare, plan. Everything's on a list. And when days go well, they go well like that. When they don't go well, we go into school at 10 or whatever. But we go.
There are good days. And of course, anyone still labouring under the illusion that punishing you, if on the occasions where they don't get into school, would somehow be constructive or helpful, has hopefully had that. Joe's just texted me to say these mums are absolute legends, and you are, and although you probably don't feel like that.
No, I don't feel like it. And I miss my job. I miss the children that I worked with in the high school that needed me, and I had to choose between them and my own children, and that was the worst choice, because the year sevens that I left just cried their eyes out, because we built a relationship, you see, we built that trust within ourselves for them to come to school. When they were having COVID tests in the sports hall, and sometimes they'd be sick because it went so far down, the person that was doing it, we'd all, I'd clear it up for them, and then we'd go again, and we'd just built that relationship. And then you have to say, I've got to go because my kids need me, and it's heartbreaking. But
it's obviously the right thing to do. It really is. Interesting that. Is about two mums today. I don't know how much of the hour you heard, but another mum who does fostering as well. So that being so...
Yes, I heard that lady,
So in a way, it's almost as if your record and your experiences, your professional experiences, equips you for this battle in a way that many mums won't have the tools.
What if I didn't? Yeah, what if I didn't? I mean,
that's what I'm thinking.
It would be horrific. I'd just be a mess on the floor. And every charity I went to said, there just isn't anyone. We don't have someone that comes out and helps. There's no one at school that can come out and help. And even that meeting I had in the high school yesterday, the person I was with said, I've got to go, we're busy. And I said, but these things can't be rushed. If you want to do this properly, you need to do this properly.
Otherwise we'll be back next week or next month. I'm sorry.
And I did say that. I said, look, these things have to be done properly. Once you get this right, he will come. And I am quite firm like that. He will come.
Yeah, and you're getting it right, but of course, some days it will feel like one step forward, two steps back. I don't know what to say. I'm just going to say good luck, Helen.
Thanks. Do you know what? If I could get to Southampton, I would, because I'd love to see you. But I don't think that every day. I think, if I could just get childcare.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But no, I know. It's fine. It's lovely to speak to you.
Well, obviously, if you can, then you're not paying for the tickets. I'd take care of that. But if you can get there, then I'd love to meet you too. But the radio station is fantastic. I absolutely love it, and it just is so. It's the only station I have ever listened to that lets opinions happen. Thank you.
And that's what I love. So I wanted to call in today because this mattered to me. So.
Well, it clearly does, and you can see why. And you've helped a lot of people come to a much better understanding of an issue that they wouldn't previously have known about, let alone understood. And that's why I also love it as well, actually. Thank you, Helen. It's 12:01. 5 minutes after 12 is the time. I just briefly, Helen has prompted I might get a bit emotional if this carries on, prompted an avalanche of lovely words about what we do here and what me. So thank you. I am reading them all, but even my ego won't extend to reading them all out loud. I can assure you that the feelings are entirely mutual, but thank you so much. 5 minutes after 12 is the time. It struck me, looking at this headline, that the conversation we're going to have will be a little bit similar to one that we had yesterday. Although at first glance, houses and schools don't have much in common, apart from bricks and mortar, I suppose. So I think you persuaded me yesterday that the notion of privilege is a little bit more selfish than I originally acknowledged. So I did genuinely wonder whether just to round up or round down the numbers, if 10% of the nation's children go to a fee-paying school where they receive a measurably better education in both academic and social capital, it's not true across the board. Some state schools are brilliant. There's, I think, one in East London that gets more kids into Oxford and Cambridge than anywhere else in the world. But that's a general truth. The reason why some parents, myself included, pay school fees, my parents included, is because, A, you can. That's the most crucial point of it, regardless of how much we like to cast ourselves as hard-working. The point is you can pay it, you can afford it, and you do it because it is better than other available options. And the question yesterday was about whether reducing that figure from 10% to 5% is good or bad for the general population. So, because you're not eradicating it. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, that Labour's plans to put VAT on school fees is going to have a particular impact on the number of children in school. I'd be very surprised if a measurable number of children are taken out of private school and put into the state system. But only time will tell, and the money raised, of course, how far it stretches will depend in part on how big of the burden placed upon the state sector is. But that's not the conversation we were having yesterday. It was a conversation about whether reducing the number of people who enjoy an unfair advantage or who can buy an unfair advantage is actually the preferable path if abolition has been entirely taken off the table. And bizarrely, a headline coming from the Liberal Democrats conference, I think goes into very, very similar territory. But I have less clear views on this because I have less experience of it. Lib Dems to hammer second home owners. Now, pearl clutchers at the Daily Telegraph have understandably got their knickers in a right old twist about this. It is. I think I've only seen it reported there, to be honest with you. But the figures in this are brilliant. I mean, just in terms of wow, you guys are crazy. Liberal Democrats, I think, are a wonderful addition to the public pageant, to the political landscape, and I think that Sir Ed Davey is rebuilding a brand that was damaged. I mean, enormously damaged by the coalition government's decision to abolish Liberal Democrat election pledges on tuition fees. It was a trade-off. In the great scheme of things, it was a trade-off. They got some of the stuff that they wanted, but in return for that, they had to do some of the stuff that they promised not to do. Such is the nature of coalition. But I think they blew it. I think getting a referendum on electoral reform just sort of seemed to hypnotise them. And then they lost it, of course. So anyway, I think Ed Davey is rebuilding the brand, as it were, or the political credibility of the Liberal Democrats. Town halls under a Liberal Democrat government would be given the power to increase the council tax on second homes by 500%. Now, I have a bit of a problem with policies that look like tinkering around the edges. I sort of think, there's not that much clear blue water between the two parties on that issue. And Labour keep failing to promise that the latest Tory announcement will be reversed. So today I think it's oil fields, isn't it, in the North Sea. So they're giving a commitment to oil fields in the North Sea. And the Labour Party have said we disapprove of it, but we won't withdraw it. And so you've got that sense of that, well, no one's really thumping the table with policies, are they? And then up pop the Liberal Democrats, who, and I don't think anyone takes offence at me saying this, who are unlikely to form the next government, but might be in coalition. They want to bring in 500% increases, or at least give councils the right to give 500% increases in council tax for second homes. It's a publication called Tackling the Housing Crisis. Now, Cornwall, Devon, London is on the list. The number of holiday properties in London. Why would people have a second home in London? Because they spend most of the time in the country side and then come to London for okay. Yeah, all right. So, no, I see. So you've got two homes and most people would spend most of the time in London and then go to the countryside. Do you notice what I did with the word side there? This is quite an interesting thing about class and codes. So when I first started knocking about with posh people, they often talk about going to the country at the weekend. And the rest of us don't know what they're talking about. Because you think, which country? but they mean the countryside. And I just did it then. Did you notice? I just said, surely you'd have your second home in the country. And then I just added side at the last minute because I remembered that I'm speaking that code. They said, what are you doing this week? Oh, we're going to the country. And I'd say, which country? What do you're going to the country? Did you know this already? Did you know that this is what posh people do? Where are you going? Did you know this? Did you know this? That this is what, where are you going at the weekend? Going to the country. Don't forget your shotguns. We're going to the country. And I say, what do you mean you're going to the... So the country could mean anything from Yorkshire to Cornwall. It usually sort of means Hampshire, doesn't it? Or the home counties, as we call them. But we're going to the country. So you'd think, oh, we're going to the country as well. We should meet up. But no, you don't understand. We're going to be in Somerset and you're going to be in Yorkshire. But we're both going to the country. We're going to the country at the weekend. So anyway, that's just a little bit of an aside. The notion of these areas, which I'm not overly familiar with. Actually, that's not true. I know Norfolk quite well, but I don't know that Norfolk is ever on these lists because I think perhaps because the problem is less acute with locals not being able to get onto the property ladder. But it's usually Cornwall, Devon, London and the Lake District that are cited in these cases. And in fact, those are the four locales which are named in this publication, Tackling the Housing Crisis, which they have unveiled at the Lib Dem conference this week. So it is described by the Telegraph as a sweeping tax raid on second home owners designed to control the number of holiday properties in areas such as Cornwall, Devon, London and the Lake District if we were to get into power. So councils would have powers to levy twice the normal council tax rate on properties used as a second home, and they'd be allowed to increase it by as much as 5 times. So question number one is, how big a problem is it? I genuinely don't know. And I want you to describe to me how it has impacted upon you. So you are a habitual resident, an indigenous resident of Cornwall, but your likelihood or your children's likelihood of living anywhere near where they grew up has been comprehensively reduced, but definitely by second homes rather than just by property prices. Possibly it's a little bit naive to suggest that they're two different things. I'm not suggesting that they're two different things. I am suggesting that although they are intertwined, you can have a huge rise in property prices without any of those properties being second homes. So I don't fully understand the issue. 0345 6060 973. John in Ramsgate points out that Blur taught us about big houses in the country. That's it, isn't it? He lives in a house, in a very big house in the country. So what is the issue here? And on top of that, I mean, it's a bit like the Labour's VAT on private schools. It's cutting away at the edges of the wealthy. So how do you define yourself as wealthy? Well, I send my children to private school and we've got a nice house in the country. Okay, I'm going to introduce policies. So a Lib Lab coalition could introduce policies that mean you can no longer afford to send your children to private school or to have a second home, a holiday home. Therefore, our definition of wealthy changes. So it's as if there is a political mood abroad that recognises the unfair distribution of wealth, but has almost given up on the idea of coming at it from above, i.e. the very wealthiest people. And instead, Labour and Liberal policies look as if they are nibbling away at the bottom of the wealth bit. So imagine a pyramid, right? Can you imagine a pyramid? Now paint the top bit, the little triangle at the top, paint that pink, all right, and the rest of the pyramid is grey. So you're looking for a redistribution of wealth. Are you going to go in from the top of the triangle, or are you going to come up underneath? I'm doing some very odd hand gestures if you're enjoying this on YouTube at the moment. I'm even sort of wibbling my fingers like a jellyfish. Are you going to come up underneath the pink triangle? Should have chosen a different colour. Are you going to come up underneath the pink triangle and nibble away at the bottom of the wealth triangle? Because the other story that we were thinking of talking about, and now that I've embarked upon this curious analysis, the Cotswolds are a massive issue, Sharon points out. The other issue is the Tories are doing the opposite. So when the Tories talk about abolishing inheritance tax, they are tickling the top of the triangle, doing even odder hand gestures now, aren't they? They're tickling the top of the triangle because inheritance tax is going to affect hardly anybody. Best case scenario is it's about 4%. It might double. So that's 7 billion quid that they raise at the moment from inheritance tax. So the Tories are coming at the top of the triangle saying, have some more money. You can hold on to more of your money. And the Lib Lab are coming, rather than going after the people with the most, they're going after with the most. I'm using two mosts here for scientific reasons. Rather than going after people with the most, they're going after people with the least most. They're going after the people. So, anyway. Well, actually, I suppose they're going after all of them because you're going to have to pay 500% more council tax, but you're going to be able to afford it anyway. I think I've set that up beautifully. How damaging are holiday homes to your area? I've never asked you that question before, but I'm asking you now. 0345 6060 973. And if you are the proud owner of one, feel free to defend yourself and explain why it would be absolutely appalling of the Liberal Democrats to quintuple what you pay in council tax on your second home. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. If you hit those numbers now, you will get through. Listen, I was prepared for fisticuffs yesterday because there's a curious breed of fellow parent of privately educated children that it insists on denying that there's any unfair advantage involved, which is just counterintuitive. But on this one, I'm a little more nuanced, I think. I don't know that the Liberal Democrats are necessarily barking up the right tree on this. And, of course, it will also apply to second homes in areas... well, it won't, because it will depend on what the council does. 0345 6060 973. Someone's just pointed out it's going to cost King Charles a lot of money, this, isn't it? Do they pay council tax? Do you pay council tax on Buckingham Palace? I don't even know. You have to presume so. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It is 21 minutes after 12, and I need to add North Norfolk to the list, which is where I would quite like a second home, as long as that's all right with the locals, and apparently it isn't. So at Burnham Market, which is a lovely part of the world, very near the coastline that I love the most in England. I haven't visited all of it, I've got to be honest, but if you gave me the choice of living near the seaside, this is the bit of seaside that I would choose to live near, but they've just voted against it. They had a little sort of referendum, and the result was that they would ban second homes. So any new developments that are being built, they voted in. The parish council took a vote, and it was in favour of stopping homes being turned into holiday lets, or indeed new developments having houses bought by outsiders for occasional use. I suppose Airbnb will be part of this conversation as well, won't it? 22 after 12 is the time. Claire is in Manchester. Claire, what do you reckon?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
Now, I've lived in Manchester for the last 20 years, but I grew up in Fakenham, which is in North Norfolk, so just down the road from Burnham Market.
Yes, I know it well.
And I went to school in Wells. So I'm still in contact with all my family there and people I grew up with.
In Wells, did you say?
Yes, Wells,
Okay.
next to sea.
Yeah, no, I know Wells really well. I love it.
Oh, it's my favourite place in the world.
Yes, same here, actually. In fact, I think we're going there. I think we're going there for half term, actually. I could be wrong, but I
I'll
hope
be
we are.
there as well.
Lovely. I'll give you a wave. We can have a stick of rock.
Walk a dog on the beach.
Yes, we will as well. Go on.
So the change I've noticed since I left school there in the late 90s, it was never busy in the winter, but it was just more steady, and it was mainly day trippers and what have you. But there wasn't a real issue with housing.
Right.
Now, most people I grew up with are really struggling now to stay in the likes of Wells, Fakenham, Sheringham.
Even Fakenham.
Oh yes,
because you're coming in from the coast, aren't you? When you get to Fakenham, but it's within easy.
It's only about 10 minutes.
Oh, you're right. It's within easy spitting distance, isn't it? You're right. Yes.
Yeah, it's sinking sort of further inland now because it's so expensive on the coast. But people I've grown up with are having to move totally out of the area.
Yeah.
Because there's what's available is stupidly overpriced if there's anything available. So what the local council have brought in there now, but all new builds must be used as a main residence, I 100% agree with.
Have they done that then?
I don't know if it's been finalised yet. I'm just speaking from memory from a couple of months back.
Quite interesting to police it, wouldn't it? It's all a bit East German. You'd be grassing on your neighbours, counting the number of days that they're there. How confident can we be that it would make a difference, though? Because, I think
it would...
It's not going to bring prices down.
Really.
Prices aren't going to start coming down, are they? I don't think.
But there would then be housing stock available.
Yes, that's true.
At the moment, there's just nothing available.
Right. Well, they're throwing up houses all the time in Burnham Market.
Have you seen the prices in Burnham Market?
I have, yes. They're absurd. You might as well be in Chiswick for for the amount of bang you get for your buck. It is incredible. But so there's two proposals here. The one that if I build a new house, it has to be a permanent residence. I get my head around that. What about sticking 500% council tax rises on people who've already got second homes? That's a different one. That's actually a little bit more of a persecution.
I think that would make a lot of people think twice on the affordability of maintaining those second houses, and hopefully push some people to sell them and bring those houses back onto the market for locals.
What
now,
about
I'm not saying we don't want second home buyers there altogether, because they desperately need tourism.
Yes.
In the winter months, it is very quiet. But it's even more quiet now than it was 20 years ago, and it's because those second homes
don't go up in the winter.
Are empty.
They don't go up in the winter. Also, and then the other thing you've got is that the business side of it is that these are small businesses, aren't they? If people are renting them out as well as using them themselves, they're as you say, bringing an array of tourists to the area. And if you're going for a week, then you're going to be spending a lot more money than you would be if you lived there for the whole 4 months. So we just have to wait and see how it plays out. But it's going to be quite popular on the ground in all of the areas affected, because it's an artificial inflation of property, isn't it, really?
Yeah, because I mean, at the moment, it's not fair on the locals at all. And they just need to balance it out. So
won't someone think of what about the Farrow and Ball salesman, Claire? What about the the Farrow and Ball paint salesman? What's going to happen to them if we ban second homes in North Norfolk? They're going to be reduced to penury. They're going to be begging outside church. It's going to be. Have you ever heard? Just while I've got you here, have you ever heard of the Whoosh?
Whoosh.
Yeah.
The wash.
No, the Whoosh.
Oh, the Whoosh. No.
I know what the Whoosh is. Someone who lives in Burnham told me a couple of weeks ago that once a year something happens to the tides, and you can get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the extra high tide that comes right in?
But if you get in the right bit of the salt marsh by Wells, you can kind of be. It's almost like a fairground ride. You'll be whooshed right through. She'd done it.
In so quickly.
Yeah, that's right, and that it all goes out so quickly. I forget which one it was, but she'd just done it, and it sounded absolutely amazing. It's on my list. It's on my list, Claire.
I'll have to look that up too.
I'll see you at the Chippy then, at half term.
Plattons.
At Plattons. 27 minutes after 12 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Anthony's in St Austell, which is smack in the middle of this story. Anthony, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi James. It's I think the main issue is when people are buying houses that would otherwise be used for local families, like 2-bed houses, and then they start Airbnb-ing them. That's directly taking them off the market and putting them into a money-making exercise where people could be using these properties.
Yes.
I lived in Morganpoor for 20 years, and that place is now 80% holiday homes. And I'm the chap that phoned up with the ear infection from surfing in the sewage.
Oh, yeah. Are you any better?
I'm better, but my daughter's had 2 weeks off school with a bug she got from the sea, and my boy had nearly a week off.
Oh, God. Oh,
now,
I'm sorry to hear that.
This does kind of lead into it, because the sewage system, like I said, you can't cope. And then in the summer, these 80% houses that are now... So, yeah, they have to pay their way. If the money goes to the right place.
Yeah, it seems quite straightforward then for a lot of people on the ground. But what about, I can't remember, you just surf for fun, do you? Or was it your business? Were you the fella that no, that was someone else who had a little surfing business. There's one in Wells next to sea, actually. It was on the telly the other day. So people rely on the second home market, the holiday home market. So second home's a bit misleading, because most people will be renting it out when they're not using it. And that is bringing in customers for the chip shops and the surf schools and the restaurant, isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, I like your little joke about the flower and ball. I'm a painter and decorator, and I've made good money off these people.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I have made good money off these people. But it's not a get rid of the tourists. It's not a get rid of the soak and hate. If I see one more Tesla, I'm going to scream. It's not about that. It needs to balance out a little bit. I live in St Austell now because Morgan Park is just nowhere near. There's no way I can move back there. No way.
No.
You know.
And that feels unfair. But I wonder, would it work? So I can bring in the legislation that means if you're building a housing development, then every single one of your customers has to prove that it's going to be their main residence. But what happens if it isn't? What happens if I change my mind? What happens if I pull the wool over your eyes?
This has happened.
Yes.
When there was, these houses for locals, or you have to have a tie to the area. It's happened where people have moved in, 2 years' time. They've then looked and gone, Christ almighty, look what I can get.
Yes, yes, of course.
Holiday Airbnb in this. That pays 10 months mortgage.
Yeah.
So let's go stay in a static caravan for the summer. Let's Airbnb. I can see people doing it. Morally, yes, I think it's wrong. And there has to be a bit more of a balance. The swing has gone way too far the other way.
Fair enough. I do. And that's, it's a Liberal Democrat policy. So the 500% increase in council tax would be helpful as well, because that might price people out of the second home market.
Well, I don't think it will. If we go back to Morgan Porth, the type of people that are in the market to buy a house in Morgan Porth, they've got silly money.
They're going to suck it up, aren't they? So who does it affect?
Exactly. So just suck it up and pay it, so it's a bit more balanced. But then it has to go to the right places.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's what I meant about, tinkering at the edges with policies. It's going to have to be meaningful, and it's going to have to be big to make the kind of differences that you described, to get that pendulum swinging back again. It doesn't mean they'll necessarily get it right first time, but there is a sense here that I guess people like me won't be aware of it, because we're part of the problem. Whether you own a second home or whether you're borrowing or renting somebody else's when you go to these parts of the world, you feel like you're part of the community. You spend a lot of money, but you don't stop to wonder what it must be like for people whose children are going to have to live 20 miles away. You just sort of crack on. 31 minutes after 12 is the time, and that is bad. That's bad for communities. Reminds me a bit of Notting Hill. I know that sounds a bit daft, but Notting Hill was a really cool place to live when I moved to London, and it was partly a really cool place to live because, at risk of upsetting Suella Braverman, because it was so multicultural. But it became such a cool place to live that all the bankers started moving in, and a lot of the coolness of Notting Hill started moving out, me included, because I couldn't afford to stay there. So I guess it's different with the landscape and the seaside, but still the community that makes these places very special gets diluted by their own popularity almost. It's 12:32. I'll stop wibbling now and hand you over to Amelia Cox with the latest headlines. It is 12:37 and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I don't know why. The paper just fell open on this page. I'm looking at talks of psychedelic retreats in the Netherlands or Jamaica. Guess how much a 6-day psychedelic retreat costs? $4,000. $4,000. Keith said, that's high, which is a very good pun, you see. Psychedelic retreat. Well played, Keith. And of course, we're talking about holiday homes and whether or not it is time to rein them in. Because as with the conversation about private education yesterday, you'd rein them in, but not for everyone. So you'd still have... Anyway, I'm just interested in how big a problem it is and what we think about the idea of making it harder to own one, harder to have one. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Tom says, I live in Cornwall. The amount of friends and family who've left due to house prices, which are directly affected by home purchase, is criminal. My wife and I are lucky enough to have bought our first home recently, but not in our hometown, because it's simply unaffordable. And I suppose if I was in devil's advocate mood today, which I'm not, I'd say, what difference does it make whether it's your first home or your second home? Loads of people have been priced out of their home territories in the southeast. Loads of people, I got priced out of Notting Hill. Loads of people have been priced out of where they might have wanted to buy a house. We're all priced out of Belgravia, aren't we? We're all priced out of Mayfair. What difference does it make if it's your first home or your second home that's priced? It's about how many people want to live somewhere. It's supply and demand. Demand is really high because it's a beautiful part of the world, whether it's your first home or your second home. I could make that argument. I don't think I'd mean it, but I could make it, and I'd be interested what your response would be. But anyway, Naz is in Enfield. Not many people have got a second home in Enfield, Naz, surely.
No, but what I was going to say is that we've got a one-bedroom flat in north of Cardiff because my kids were priced out of London, so they went to Wales.
Oh, and you've got a flat to stay in when you go and see them.
Yes, and look after the children.
Yes.
And we're getting taxed. We're getting taxed by the local government because it's counted as a second home. We took all our savings to buy this place, and we're getting taxed. It's a second home.
What's the rate then in Wales? Have Wales already got legislation in place on this?
Yes.
What do you pay?
It's double. It's double.
So if it was your permanent residence, you'd pay half the council tax that you pay now.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and Wales have all done it, and I think it's really unfair because it's all our savings. We're not going and we're not renting it out as a beauty spot, second place. So they've already done it, and they don't take in individual circumstances.
They can't though, can they? They can't really take individual circumstances.
Well, I suppose so. But when you think it's, it just is, maybe a kick in the teeth when you're trying to do the right
people
thing.
Listening to this have an image of some Tesla driving city boy tooling up the motorway to the Cotswolds where he parks up for the weekend and smokes a fat cigar, whereas what you're describing is a purchase made, almost through necessity and not comfortably, and using up all your savings, and partly for childcare reasons. So it's the opposite of what the stereotype second homeowner looks like.
Yes, that's why I wanted to make that point, that it shouldn't be a blanket thing.
No.
Yes.
But how would we do it, though? Would we send around the second home inspectors, and then you would... Is your flat in an area where second homes are popular? Is it like around Penarth? Is it on the coast?
No, it's north of Cardiff. It's called Nantgarrow. Most people haven't heard of it. It's it's not. It's north of Cardiff. It's a very quiet place.
Right.
And we haven't purchased anybody. We haven't.
You don't think you've pushed anyone out of the housing market by buying it? But so is the rule in place?
There are a lot of council houses there, actually. A lot of council there. So it's not a rich area at all, but we haven't priced anybody out.
No.
And I'm just trying to show that there is another side. Of course, there's a side when people are making money off it, and but I think it has to be looked at, if possible.
Yes, I think. Well, you might be right. And so, is it across all of Wales then? I'm so bad at this, Naz. It's because all the papers are printed in London. I didn't know they've already done it in Wales.
Yes, so all local authorities apart from two have done this policy.
Well,
it was supposed to. So, I think just because they haven't got money, it's a money-making policy. They've been cut to the. It's a money-making policy. So yes, so Wales have done it already. And when I heard 500%, I was thinking, oh, gosh, I hope they don't go on that bandwagon.
Well, let's hope they're not listening, eh?
Yeah.
None of the Labour politicians in Wales are listening. Thank you, Naz. You make a really valid point, actually, rather better than I managed to when I was talking about pink triangles and ticklish fingers, coming at people from the bottom of the wealth peak rather than coming at people from the top. But how do you come at people from the top? Well, you increase inheritance tax. The Tories are doing the exact opposite, or you bring in some sort of asset tax, a flat tax, a windfall tax. I don't know. I'm just going to address a direct question from Dave. He says, I've never been to a book signing before, but I've booked a ticket for your show in Manchester on the 28th of November. It might seem like a silly question, but does the ticket price include a copy of the book to be signed at the event? If not, do I need to order one from Waterstones to be collected at the event? Well, I don't know, Dave, because there was an option on the site. It's sold out now, Manchester. There was an option on the site to either buy a ticket with a book or to buy just a book. I think they're about 20 quid each. So depending on how much you paid, there will or will not be a book included. But I'll definitely be signing them after the show. 12:43 is the time. They're all sold out now, apart from Southampton, where even if it is sold out, I'm going to pretend that it isn't because people find it so funny when I complain about Southampton not having sold out. It's nearly sold out in Southampton. So hurry if you do want to come along. I'm also doing a couple in Scotland. You can see the details of that. I'm doing the Hay Winter Festival. I'm doing the Cheltenham Literary Festival as well, if you want to come and see me at any of those to discuss my new book. Rhian is in Gwynedd in North Wales, which is quite appropriate given where Naz was talking about. Rhian, what would you like to say?
Hi.
Rhian.
Sorry. Rhian's a female name.
I know. I've just corrected it. I don't know why. I thought I'd Rhian. Apologies, Rhian.
Yeah, yes. Going after the last caller who said it's unfair to tax them. What's more unfair is that the housing market in Wales has been decimated by capitalism because since Margaret Thatcher privatised a hell of a lot of things, since then, house prices have boomed everywhere, and especially in Wales, where we're competing with prices in England. And obviously, most of the population in Britain lives in England. So when these buyers find a new house, obviously they find places on the coasts. And the most popular area, most Welsh speakers in Wales live in northwest Wales and in a village called Abersoch.
Yes.
It's so popular with second home owners that a local school was shut down because not enough parents were able to live there.
Wow. So these are, they're big issues then. It's not just, you think of a holiday home as being a sort of a frilly little issue, but it's a big issue for the people in the areas where it is not a holiday home, it's a home. It's a really, really big deal.
It's a serious problem, and when it comes to...
but Welsh councils already have the right to bump up council tax by 300%, I'm being told by my...
Yes, that is a very, very, very new policy that's just come out because it's when the last caller said it's a money-making scheme. It's not. What it is people are trying to understand that it's actually destroying Welsh culture.
God, that's a really powerful point because it is the Welsh language areas and the people moving in who will have no intention of learning Welsh are pricing out people who would pass it on to future generations. Thank you, Rhian. That's, I'm glad we did this rather than inheritance tax. It was a toss-up between the two because I felt I can't do both. It's the same subject in a way. And very similar to yesterday's conversation about private education, but this is more interesting to me. 1246, the psychology of inheritance tax is interesting. So we might do that tomorrow. What a time to be alive. It is 12:50. Claire says there's no such thing as a second home. A home is where you live, and no one can live in two places. It's immoral when people are homeless. Gosh, I hadn't thought of it like that, actually. I disagree with the first bit. I think you can have two homes. You feel equally at home in both of them. It's a weird sort of duality, possibly something to do with boarding school. The weirdest thing about boarding school was that within an hour of getting home, you sort of felt that you hadn't been away. And within an hour of getting back to school for the start of a new term, you sort of felt that you hadn't been home. You did have two sort of existences almost. I think you can do that with second homes. I don't know, really. And it looks like Southampton is sold out. I know how closely you follow the excitement surrounding the imminent publication of my new book, How They Broke Britain. Would you believe that it has links to the place where Suella Braverman gave her speech yesterday? Actually, this is what I meant when I told you a while ago that I've got to stop writing it now because otherwise it's never going to end. Every week something happens which would actually fit in the How They Broke Britain narrative. But Braverman features quite heavily. The introduction is Braverman and Raab, not because they are responsible for breaking Britain, but they are proof of how broken it is. So I use Dominic Raab and Suella Braverman as evidence of how utterly corrupted our political system is, because two people like that could rise to the highest offices in the land. Obviously, Johnson drives that point home completely in Chapter 9, but the introduction is looking at symptoms more than causes. And you would struggle to find two better examples of how utterly broken normal politics was by, in this case, Brexit and the lies of Boris Johnson that Brexit ushered in than the appointment of Dominic Raab and Suella Braverman to key roles. I thought that they might both be toast by the time the book came out. Raab's resignation came in time for inclusion, but I thought Braverman might be toast as well. She still might. This speech that she's given in America is disgusting, deliberately disgusting, but Rishi Sunak seems to be lacking vertebrae, doesn't he, when it comes to actually disciplining members of his team. So but the place where she gave the speech has relevance to 2 or 3 different chapters of the book, which is really interesting because it's all about the unseen and sometimes seen links between secretly funded think tanks, right-wing media and the Conservative Party. And yesterday's speech by Suella Braverman absolutely nailed all 3 of those points, which would have been a useful culmination of the introduction if it wasn't for the fact that the book was already at the printers before she did it. 12:53 is the time. To answer Sarah's question, yes, there is a waiting list for cancelled tickets for the book tour. If you go on the website, there's a link on my Twitter, then you can join the waiting list to pick up any returns. And there might be a few more coming up in Northampton, depending on concrete issues. They're refurbishing the theatre. There may be some. If it's finished in time, we'll be able to put a few more on the up for sale. Richard's on the Isle of Wight, where second homes abound. Richard, what would you like to say?
You mentioned Raab and Braverman, then it's put me off my stroke. I remember not to swear.
Yes, if you would. Thank you.
Going back to the lady who bought the flat in Wales,
yes.
I think the important thing is that she's bought an asset. Yes. She could be paying for a hotel.
That's true.
So paying double or 3 times. And the issue in Wales is they have done that, and it's only reduced second ownership by about 7%. But enough of Wales, let's talk about the Isle of Wight.
Yes.
I spend a lot of my time as a local councillor dealing solely with housing issues of people that are being ejected for properties that are becoming Airbnbs or landlords are selling or whatever else, and it has quite a big knock-on effect. And we have to try and think of it like a buffet or school dinners, is that no one should get a second plate in terms of a second home until everyone's had their first plate.
Yeah.
It's a bit like wealth. I have no issue with people being wealthy, but when we've got extreme wealth, no one should be poor, and you know this better than I do. But the numbers on the island are we've got 2,400 households on the housing waiting list.
Right.
And we've got 2,500 Airbnbs and about 1,000 second homes. And it's not debt related. I know you don't just sell an Airbnb and it becomes available, because there's all sorts of issues.
No, but those numbers are striking, aren't they?
They are. And the knock-on is that pre-COVID, a nice 3-bedroom house in a nice town like Cowes would have cost you about 950 quid a month rent.
Right.
If you're canny, you probably had three properties to choose from. If you're canny, you'd probably knock the rent down by 50 quid a month.
Yeah.
That same house now is 1,350 quid a month, and it's disappeared.
Why?
Because you've had...
Why this post-pandemic explosion? Why this post-pandemic?
Hopefully this next figure explains it, is there used to be, on a churn, 300 houses a month available for rent on the Isle of Wight.
Are you in the business? You sound like you're in the property business.
No, I'm a local councillor.
Well, then you are in the business, but not from a commercial angle then.
No. I also own a fish and chip shop. Your point about fish and chip shop being busy is and isn't the case. But anyway,
okay.
That's for a different day. So there was 300 properties available for rent a month pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Now there's only 80 a month. So you can see in terms of an order of magnitude why that makes it difficult.
Is this because people changed their priorities during lockdown and decided that they would spend more of their time in the Isle of Wight? Because you say Airbnb, Airbnb, but it will also be inhabited by the owners for a lot of the year.
Some are, some aren't.
Yes, of course.
And what it is what you had during COVID was you had a lot of people who were perhaps on furlough or on full pay working from home in a city or wherever, who all of a sudden had excess cash because they couldn't spend it. You had business people being given grants.
Yes.
And and this conversation could go on for days, but I'll keep it short. But we've got fairly poor pension provision in this country. So people go, hang on, I've got £50,000-60,000 I've never had before. That's enough for deposit on a house on the island. I can rent it out for 6 weeks a year, use it the rest of the time, and it's an asset. It's my pension, and that's not anecdotal. That's what we've seen happen.
Of course, it is.
And in the way you were talking about inheritance tax,
what's the policy in the what's the policy for your council? Is it right, normal council tax for second homes?
So no council in the UK can do anything until the levelling up bill goes through Parliament.
I thought Welsh councils have already done stuff, or am I being misinformed?
Different country.
You said the UK. You said the
UK. Sorry, I did indeed. In England. My mistake.
Fine.
Sorry, I'm glad you corrected me.
No, that's what
in
I'm
England,
here for.
It just sounded like that conversation with my wife. In England, we can't do anything until that bill's passed. Then we have the option to double council tax on second homes and holiday homes.
Okay. And are you planning to, do you think? Or was that...
Yeah, we did have a little pre-vote in council, and there was some objectors, but not many.
You got an idea on it?
Yeah, and the reason being is that, we've lost £93 million a year in council funding. The £2 or £3 million a year that raises builds the social housing we need. It starts to make a huge difference. You've talked many times about how on a knife-headed local councils are, and I can't explain to you how that is exactly the case. Yeah,
and so even if it doesn't have a measurable impact on locals being able to get back into the housing ladder, it will have a measurable impact on how much money you've got to spend as a council.
Exactly that. And if we can start building 200-300 affordable and social homes a year, from the numbers I gave you, in a relatively few number of years, you start to give people hope of owning their own front door.
I like it. No, I like it, and it's important. And in fact, the numbers for first-time buyers have gone through the floor today. I think it's down about 22%, which is going to be partly relevant to what we're talking about. Before you go, where's the chippy?
It's in Cowes High Street. The only one left in Cowes High Street.
What's it called?
Corrie's Cabin.
Right, I'll be there. Next time I'm on the island, I'll be in Corrie's Cabin. I'd travel a long way for good fish and chips. Probably further than is healthy. Let me read this out, because I didn't think you're a bad person. It goes, you sell books for extra money, James. I rent out a second house to top up my pension. Why am I a bad person? I don't think you're a bad person, but the reason why these two events are economically different is every time I write a book, there's not a first-time author out there who loses his book deal, you see. So it's slightly different. If I write a book, it doesn't mean you can't. Whereas if you own two homes, I can't own the second one. That's all. So I don't think you're a bad person. I don't know where you got that idea, but I'm happy to help. And, of course, to surreptitiously mention my book again, which is very important. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, Rewind Live Radio, or enjoy the whole show podcast. I really fancy fish and chips now, but I've got to go and record a podcast. You'll also find all of LBC's shows to catch up on, as well as stay up to date with the latest news from LBC. Rewind Live Radio on Global Player. Download for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Tom Sawbrick with you at 4. Sheila Fogarty with you now.
Am I going to get a free copy of this book, or are you going to make me buy one?
Of course you can have a free copy.
I was tweeting the hell out of it before a publication.
There it is. No, absolutely, you can. It's not out until November the 2nd.
Oh, okay.
No, so you can have it then.
Thank you.
All right.
Will you get someone nice to sign it for me?
Yeah, I will. Keith. Keith is doing signed copies.
Thank you. I look forward to that. Early Christmas present. 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 To that. Early